In England, June 15, 1215, the Magna Carta was created. The barons were tired of how King John was an overpowering monarch, so they took a stand and drafted the Articles of the Barons. As a result, King John was fully under Parliament, their government, and the citizens' rights are better protected. King John socially made a widow be forced to marry other men in exchange for money. King John would use the money to pay for the war he had with France. Politically, he always fought with France for the land and failed. He tried to make the Pope be under his ruling as well. He economically overtaxed the noblemen and the people of his kingdom because he owed money to France. He increased taxation to help pay for a already lost fight. The main people involved were the barons, Pope Innocent III, and the King of England. Due to him losing land and taxing more money, the barons stood up and decided to do something against him. First, that we have granted to God, and by the present charter have confirmed for us and our heirs in perpetuity, that the English Church shall be free, and shall have its rights undiminished, and its liberties unimpaired. Magna Carta 1215.
It was believed that the king's divine right came from God. Only God can judge the monarch because he has the authority to do so. The divine rights of kings was the ideal punishment to enforce obedience among the people. People believe that God gave great power to the kings. English kings making concessions to his barons to maintain peace and secure the throne. The charter issued by Henry I during 1100 was the most notable. Henry was the third child of William I. William I was placed on the English throne by Rufus. When Rufus died of suspicious circumstances, Henry rushed to Westminster. The document issued on that occasion is the first surviving English coronation charter. Richard Fitz-Nigel wrote a document called Cotton Manuscript Lea Capua, a 16 dialogue of the executioner for Henry II, because he wanted the people to know how the king could do as he pleased and how his noblemen should act. Richard Fitz-Nigel states, although the king's wealth is not unavailably obtained by strict process of law, his subjects have no right to question his actions. Once the noblemen plead their loyalty to the king decided to give the heirs some land. The noblemen gave their land to their heirs so they could have land to farm on and to create a family. John's father was the King of England before John and Richard. After he died, the throne went to Richard. During King Richard's time, he got captured by Emperor Henry VI for 4 years, and John Philip II of France tried to gain control of England, but they failed. King Richard came back and decided to banish John and take his land. King Richard passed away in 1199 in France. Soon after, King Richard's nephew Arthur was taken by Philip II and was murdered in 1202 in the city of Brittany, England. John became the king in May 1202. But the people in Brittany believed that King John was the reason why Arthur was murdered. People in Brittany started to rebel. After King John was crowned king, the Pope gave him the kingship seal somewhere in ruin of March 1203. In 1204, King John's army was defeated in Brittany and he retreated, earning him the name John Southward.
King John made more enemies when he refused to accept Stephen Langston as Archbishop of Canterbury, the main position in the church. By doing so, he challenged the authority of Pope Innocent III in Rome. Pope Innocent III punished King John by excommunication. King John came back and decided to tax the church, take their land, and forcing priests to leave their parishes. In 1212, King John accepted Langston and gave the land back he took from the popes, and John's excommunication was lifted. 1215, right after he made England a fief of the Pope, the barons calmed down a little. King John was right to call up his vassals, also known as the barons, to provide money or to be a knight during times of war. Early 1214, he left with a force to France. King John won battles but did not defeat the King of France. He returned in England in October of 1214. King John economically demanded money from the barons that did not fight with him. The barons saw how weak the king was because he lost so much money and land during fighting, and began to make their own demands. In January of 1215, a group of rebel barons appeared before the King John, asking for written charter from him about ancient liberties that tells them that a king can tax this deadly and and allowed to make 12-year-olds fight. King John stalled and said he will give them an answer late spring. While he was stalling, he was sending letters to Pope Innocent III and creating an army. In April, the barons confronted King John and asked for more specific demands, and King John ignored them, resulting in the barons creating their own army led by Fitzwater. King John asked the Pope to help him, and he did. A stalemate ensured the 40 barons and their allies held London as well as their own forts around England. Langston began to work on a negotiated settlement to prevent civil war and told the groups to meet at Runnymede. June 1215 is when the Articles of Barons was sealed by the king. Not much detail about the day in history, but the days afterwards. The 63 articles in the Magna Carta was rewritten and explained. Around June 19, 1215, King John finally put his seal on the final draft of the Magna Carta. In return, the rebel barons decided to renew their oath to the king. Many of the articles concerned the federal law that were important to the rebel barons. Some corrected King John's abuse of power to the barons, the church, merchants, and freemen. The Magna Carta ignored about 75% of the population. The purpose of this charter was to prevent the king from personally ordering freemen to be arrested without lawful judgment. This charter was not intended to list rights for English folks and the barons. The barons wanted the king to understand that every man, woman, even the king, is subject to the law. The Magna Carta politically helped widows have some power by stating in Section 8, "No woman shall be compelled to marry so long as she wishes to remain without a husband, but she must give security that she will not marry without royal consent. If she holds land of the crown or without the consent of whatever of the Lord, she may hold of them."
By September, King John got the Pope to annul the Magna Carta, which created a short-term and a deadly impact. King John and his army was going around England killing all the barons that went against him. This created a bloody civil war among England soil. During this war, King John suddenly died in October 1215 from dysentery because of a night of high drinking and heavy eating. The barons casted Henry III, John's youngest son, as the new king of England. This made the civil war slowly come to an end. In 1217, the Pope and the barons cast the Magna Carta onto King Henry III, and the Pope approved the Magna Carta this time. The Magna Carta did do a long-term impacts, as in the U.S. Bill of Rights and the Constitution America created. The term, "no taxation without representation," was established from the Magna Carta. The Founding Fathers took a part of the Magna Carta which states, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land." With this, they created rights to have a fair trial under the law. This was established. In England around 1989, the Human Rights Act was passed. This also helped England people or people who lived in England rights be better protected. The human rights protected everyone, rich, young, poor, old, disabled, and more.
So in conclusion, the king and the barons worked together and officially finished the charter to where both parties accepted and agreed. Women's rights to vote and to have a voice was fought for after the charter was released. The charter influenced many worldwide documents. One country mostly influenced was the United States. This charter is a legacy of the individual rights humans have not only in England but everywhere in the world it affected. This liberty started once the king sealed the charter. Parts of the Magna Carta have been put on stamps. The U.S. documents have influenced with the Bill of Rights and U.S. Constitution. The United Nations adopted the document of Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Even in present day, the Magna Carta has made a great change in the world we live in. As the Magna Carta says, "To all free men of our kingdom we have also granted for us and our heirs forever all the liberties written out below to have it to keep for them and their heirs of us and our heirs."